Hi, and welcome to the Creative Frugal Wonder Woman. Today is our very first Wonders of Watercolor Club class. And I am just so excited. I'm so excited that I found these confections. They're just so beautiful and easy to use. Today we're going to be using the Woodlands collection. And they just have beautiful woodland colors, so all natural colors. And it just goes beautifully with our little frost-loving friends from My Favorite Things. So we're going to go ahead and get started right away. Here is our little bunny and penguin sitting on a stump. And we're going to use our fine tip of the Prima Marketing watercolor brushes. And we have our directions here, so we're going to follow along with step one. So step one is we bring some fluid into our brush, not too much, just enough that we're going to wet the stump area. So you always want to lay down just a little bit of water of where you want your paint to go. And the reason we do this is that once you add the paint to this where it's wet, then the paint will go there and not into the other areas. So then we're going to go to number 85, which is Sand Ridge. I don't know if you can, I just picked up a little bit of color there, and we're going to lay it down. Now we're going to go ahead and lay it down over the whole stump. And once the color is down here, now you can really play with it and move it around. You're going to notice it's going to start getting a little bit lighter. So you can go ahead and add some more color to your brush. And then just move that all around. And I want this a little bit darker. So I can just add a little bit in there. All right, we've got good coverage. Now you can just let it dry, which would take a little bit, but I like to use my heat gun. Excuse me. So we're going to go ahead and heat set that and let it get it to dry so that we can go right on to the next color. So now for the next color, we're going to come in. I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush off. We're going to come into 91, which is Bear. This first one here. And we're going to bring in some darker color. And again, you can just move this right along. This is going to give, now we have that edge, so a little bit of a shadow. And just maybe bring some of the shadowing down from the snow. That snow's maybe piled up a little bit there. And then we can bring in a little bit underneath where our bunny is sitting and our penguin. And as you can see, that's getting lighter. Now I'm just over here really washing off my tip so it runs clean. But you can see as I used it, it's getting lighter and lighter. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to, I want this to dry, so we're going to heat it again. And if you don't have a heat gun, that's okay. You can let it dry. It doesn't take a long time. I just like to speed things up a little bit. But now after it's dry, because I want to maintain that color of darkness that I brought into the 91, but I want to get rid of that harsh line. So now that it's dry, I'm going to come back with my just plain brush and soften this line a little bit. Oh my gosh, just love it. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can go ahead, let's go ahead and heat set that, because we're going to go into the bunny, and I want to make sure that's good and dry before I add water to the bunny, because it will start to bleed if I don't. And we don't want that. We want our colors to be separate, nice and crisp and clear. So drying in between is going to make sure to ensure that we don't mix our colors. Okay, so my brush is nice and clean. I wiped it off on my paper towel. Now we're going to come over. We've added just a little bit of water into our brush, and we're going to go ahead and wet the bunny. Now, not the inside of his ears. We're going to do that pink later on. Not his scarf, but just the bunny fur. And I'm only going to do his head right now. And then we're going to come into 93, which is the gray stone. And I'm going to start up here and bring that color in. And on the left side of his ear, so remember our light source, and maybe come down his nose a bit. You see I got a little bit outside the edge. So we're going to leave them like this. We're going to go ahead and clean off our water brush. And we're going to come back with just a plain clear brush. And I'm going to come in, maybe add a little bit of water and kind of soak up that gray that came out. And I just love that. It's like a little eraser. I just got rid of that little gray that come up over the edge. So now, since I'm not going to be touching his head again, I can go ahead and work on the his body. So we'll come down and wet his body with our brush. Did just a little bit of shadowing underneath. And it really doesn't seem like we're putting any water on there, but trust me, it is getting wet. Then we'll come into the gray, and we're going to add some of that gray underneath, just creating some shadowing. And if it's too dark for you, go ahead and wipe off your brush and come back in, add some water, and you can lighten that up. It is going to lighten as he dries. There. All right, let's go ahead and make sure he's good and dry, because we're going to add another layer. Oh no, we went to 86. Oh, we added a little bit darker shade. So we're going to add a little bit darker shade to our bunny now. So we're going to come into 86. 86 is a shadow. It is a little bit darker. So let's go ahead and get some water onto our pan over here. Because this is really quite a bit darker, so I want to tone that down a bit before I add it. And then we're going to just create again this shadowing where it's darker, left side of the ear again. Maybe under here where it's darkest. Under his cup. Wipe off our brush, get it nice and clean, and then let's blend that a little. Get rid of that harsh edge. Wipe it off. Let's heat them up. Get them all dried off. So now, one of the things you can see, because I didn't dry in between those two, I got this distinct line. So let's go ahead and I just want to get rid of that. I'm clearing off my brush and coming back to get rid of that harsh between the white and the gray. And I really like how you can manipulate the watercolor. There is no such thing as, I mean, it's just amazing to me how you can really work with this with just a littlest amount of water and just bring your pictures to life. I love this. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and clean off our brush again. And I didn't go too much over here by the penguin, or his scarf is going to be in between the two spots. So I'm gonna just go ahead and wet where he would be black and his little flipper here, wing, I don't know what you call it, I guess they're wings, although they don't fly. All right, and then we're going to come into 86, which is the darkest one again. And because this is going to be a black, you can just leave that full strength. We don't need to dilute it this time. And just use this real fine to get in those little areas. And you can also, if you don't want to use a water brush, you can use regular paint brushes too. And along with just a cup of water. The problem I have with that is it's a little bit, you have more control over your water flow. And you don't have to go in and keep adding more water to your brush because it's right there at your fingertips. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get that black off. And remember, as I'm coming over here into my paper towel and wiping, I'm squeezing. So I'm getting clear water through the brush to wash out that paint that's currently in my brush. So now what I want to do is I want to come in and maybe lighten some of this up by taking some of that color out of there to add some highlights and lowlights. And if you wanted, you could also come in with more of the 86 into lowlights. But darn it, you would want to dry that first, because if you don't, it's just going to all blend together. It's not going to get darker. So you want to dry it, heat set it so it's nice and dry, and then come in with more of your shadow. And I'm just using the corner of my brush to give me a real fine line there, and able to bring in more of the darker. So that adds and then I'm coming over here, again, wiping, squeezing water to get that nice and clean. Okay, so let's go ahead and dry them again. See if I don't mess up here. So now you can see how I have the low lights, the highlights, and that shadowing with just the one color. And I was able to do that because I dried in between and added more color, or used a clear brush and drew out some of the color. So now we're going to go on to step 4, and we're going to wet the bunny scarf. Everything's nice and dry now. We've got a clear paintbrush. We're just putting water down. And we're going to use number 88, which is this foxberry color. And we're going to come in, I like to come in on the edge where it's going to be darkest. And then also we're going to do his little pom-pom, the penguin's pom-pom on the top of his hat, and every other stripe on the brim of his hat. And then also add a little bit more here, and we're going to do the stripes on his scarf also. Again, I'm just using the tip of my brush, or the corner, I guess you could say. I'm using this end right here going flat. So rather than having it flat this way, I've put it on its side, and I'm using just the tip to get in those real narrow areas. And I can even come back and add a little bit more at the top. Now that was already dry, you can see how dry that, or how fast that dried. And maybe add some darker into his scarf. Yep, see how that was dry, so it allowed me, that didn't bleed into the other part. So I want to leave that center part highlighted. So we're going to take our brush, we're over here, we're wiping it, cleaning it, squeezing some water through. Now if that wasn't light enough for you, you could come in with just a clear brush and draw up some of that color and make it even lighter. Okay? Again, make sure you're clearing your brush off over here with the water. And now we can, let's see, go on to the second part of step 4, which is wetting the penguin. You know what? Because I'm changing colors, I really want to make sure I have this nice and dry. Because I'm going to come in with number 92, which is Mist. And that's the blue or green. It's kind of a dark green blue. And I don't want that to blend into my red. So I wanted to make sure that was really good and dry. Now I can come in with some water and wet his hat. And then come over here to grab our mist and then bring it in. So yeah, if you don't remember, you're going to really want to play with your brushes and get one that feels right for you. That's kind of dark for me, so I'm going to come over here to my palette and I'm going to add some water, and that's just going to make that a little bit lighter for me. And I'm using the tip of the corner and coming in on these stripes on the brim of his hat. Coming in again, adding some more water. It's still kind of dark for me. And adding the color. So now you might have to play with it. Now I got too much in there. Too much water, and it was not enough color. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, because this has too much water, I want to heat it. I want it to be dry, because if I added this wet brush to it, I would soak up all the color across the hat, and I just want to add some highlight here. So even though my brush looks dirty, it's not. See, it's nice and clear. I'm going to go ahead and I want to soak up some of this color. See how that, I just soaked that right up. So I want it to be lighter or darker on the left side here, but I wanted some highlight. So now we'll go ahead, dry it again, and we can manipulate some more with our brush. There we go. Wipe off our brush. And if you got too much out, then go ahead and you can add some more of the color back in. All right. So next we're going to go on to the ears and the cheeks. So let's, since we're not going to be touching, we don't have to heat set that necessarily. So let's go ahead and wet. Now I had a little bit of gray in there, so I want to make sure I got it wet, but I want to make sure I get the gray out of my brush, so I'm wiping that off. And now we're going into number 88, which is Foxberry again. And this was real dark on the scarf, and we don't want it that dark. So let's really dilute this over here on our pan. And we're going to just kind of feather up like we do with Copics. And then I'm going to dilute it even more, really squeezing, adding more water here. And we're going to add for his cheeks. And I'm just doing the side here, that tip of my Isn't that so cute? Okay, so we're cleaning off the red again in our brush. And maybe, now what I'm going to do, I want to make sure this is dry, because I like the color at the base of the inside of his ear, but I want to soften that edge. So I'm heating that to dry it, and then I'm coming back in and I'm starting at the top of his ear and coming back this way, because I just want to soften that. Clean out your brush, do the same thing on this side. Oh my gosh, love him. Love, love, love. Now if you wanted, you could take it this way to add more pink up into the tip of the ear, whichever way you want. So now we're going to go ahead and do the penguin beak and his feet. So let's add some water. We've cleaned our brush. We're going to add a little bit of water to his feet. And we're going to use number 95, which is redwood. This is more like a burnt orange. Just a little bit on his beak. Now, I'm going to go ahead and heat set that, because I want to pull, his feet are a little dark. I want some highlights. So I'm cleaning out my brush, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to pull some of this color back out with my brush. Oops. As I drop my heat gun. Okay, so I still have that shading, so it's darker on the left side. And his beak is a little small, so I'm not going to worry about trying to do any shading there. And our last color is doing the mugs. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of wet, just a little bit on the side. Oh, let's wet the whole mug. That's all right. But we're going to come in with 89, which is Pond, a really pretty teal color here. You can see this one. And just do the side, because I'm creating a highlight. And it didn't blend. I didn't have a whole lot of water on my mug, so it didn't bleed over. So now we can go ahead and clean off our brush here. And we can manipulate that over to get rid of that harsh edge and bring it back this way. And if it's not enough color for you, you can add more color. But we just really wanted to keep that highlight at the center of the cup. And I know the penguins is a little bit harder to do, But you can see how we kept that highlight at the center. And you know what we forgot? Or not we. I do not have a mouse in my pocket. But I forgot the pads to the bunny's feet. So let's just go over our foxberry that we used on the inside of his ears and their cheeks is right here on our palette. I know it's dry, but we can go ahead and just add some water, moisten that back up, and now come in and just do the pads of his feet. So now we wanted it real pale anyhow, so we didn't necessarily have to add water. Or just real controlled in where we want the paint to go, and it was diluted, so that made it just perfect. Just a nice pale pink onto the feet, the pads of our bunny. There we go. Isn't that so adorable? Now, if you wanted, for this card, I went ahead and I just trimmed around and cut him out, which was really easy. They do have dies that you can use, or you could just go ahead and use one of your bigger brushes and use some blues or purples to add the sky and shadow, or the shadowing on the snow. But it's just so simple. I'm just loving this watercolor. So you have in your packet, you will have received a idea sheet. So here's two different ways that you can color him. This one I use the vintage pastels in the classic collection set. So that gives you some other options. And then we also have our link that you can go and purchase the Frost Loving Friends set. Again, there is a die set that goes with this if you'd like to get the die set. There's so many cute little things that go with him. There's a little I think a little beaver, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe he's a bear, little snowshoes, several different sayings. So this is an adorable stamp set that you'll be able to use for just lots of different occasions. So I hope you've enjoyed our first watercolor Wonders of Watercolor Club, and I cannot wait to show you next month. So thank you again, and we'll see you March 1st. Have a blessed day. Bye.